Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. A classic still life image like this one has an elegance all of its own. Most of that look is from the lighting. Soft, yet still has a direction. And together with a complementary colour in the graduated background really finishes off the picture. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay. So to start off with, I have this Gabaria, which is a type of daisy really, and that is going to form the subject. So the next thing I'm going to look at right now is actually the background. So what I want to do is place a background back here somewhere, and for that I'm going to use a piece of blue mount board like this one. So here we go, I'll just place this on this C-stand at the back here, and that's going to form the background to the shot. Now I've picked this colour blue because it's a nice complementary colour to the colour in the flower here. Okay, so with that in about the right place, what I'm going to do now is find out where I'm going to place the camera. Now I'm using a medium format camera, but the same would apply to full frame or any camera really. On the front of this I have a 120mm macro lens. Now that's the equivalent angle of view that you would get from something like a 70mm on a full frame format camera. So just to find out where to place the camera, what I'm going to do is just line up the shot. So I'm just hand holding the camera and just moving around until I get the background filling the frame and the subject in a good composition within that frame. So about there should do it, I think. So having established where the camera needs to go, what I can do now is just put a tripod underneath it. There we are. Just pop that on the top like so. Okay. So with that now done, the next thing to do would just be to tether this camera into Capture One software so it's easy to follow along and see the results as I get them. There we go, that's all tethered now, and I have a tethering cable here, and I also have a mains power supply. Saves going through lots and lots of batteries. Okay, so with that all connected, I can now show you the settings I have on the camera on the software here. So it's in full manual mode. I've got a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second. Now that's the flash sync speed for the focal plane shutter in this camera. And I have an ISO of 100 and I've set an aperture of f11. Now I've used that on purpose so it'll give me a reasonable depth of field at this sort of distance. Okay, so with all that set, next thing to do would just be to do a very quick test just to make sure I don't get any contamination from the house lights. So I'll just grab an image. And there we go, you can see from that there's a very slight ghost of an image there, but nothing to be concerned about. Okay, so with that done, next thing to do would be to think about the lighting. Now with this type of photography, the lighting is everything really. It will give you the whole atmosphere to the picture. So for a classic still life like this, what I'm going to do is use a reasonable size softbox over the top of the subject here. So for that I'm going to use this 2 foot by 2 foot softbox, and I've attached that to a flash head and I've put the whole lot in this C-stand. So I'll just get that in position. There we are. That's about in the right position, I think. So the idea being that I want it directly over the top of the subject. And in this direction, what I've actually done is feathered the light slightly away from the background, just to make sure that without that being illuminated, it does actually go completely dark. Okay, so with this in something like the right position, the next thing to do would be to find the right exposure. So I'm just going to use TTL metering through the flash sync trigger. Now in this particular camera, the flash sync trigger is actually built in. So what I can do is just bring that up on the menu here. And I'll just put that in TTL, like so. So with that, I'll just grab an image. Now you may have noticed that the flash fired twice there. The first time is to assess the exposure, and the second time is actually to grab the image. So this is the result that we've got. Now for a TTL exposure, that's not too bad at all actually. It would get confused with having a very dark background. So I think it's probably about one stop over. So what I can do is just go into the flash sync trigger and just take one stop of energy out of the system. At the same time, I'll just take it out of TTL and put it into manual. We'll take a stop off. There we go. And I'll just capture that again. Now obviously being in manual control, it means that from now on I have complete control over the energy in this flash and any others that I use. Okay, so you can see in here that the exposure is actually not bad, but we are getting quite a lot of flare from just about everywhere. So what I'm going to do is just make use of a lens hood, and we'll see if we can get rid of some of that flare. I'll just place that on the front of the lens, like so, and I'll just capture that again. Okay, so that's made it slightly better, but it really hasn't improved it very much. And that's because at this sort of distance and at this sort of angle, it's going to be very difficult to stop the light from this surface actually getting straight into the lens. So what I'm going to do is make use of a flag. So this is a flag. It's basically just a piece of card, black on one side, white on the other. And what I'm going to do is just put this in a stand, and I'm just going to put it on the front of the lens like so. So with that in something like the right position, it may need to be moved slightly just to make sure it's not in the picture. It should make sure that I get none of this light straight into the lens and remove all the flare. So we'll just grab that and see what happens. There we are, that's much better. So it just goes to show that you actually need quite a large flag to get rid of all the flare. Don't just rely on the hood that you get with your lens. It will work most of the time, but in extreme cases like this, it won't work. So you're going to need something extra. And as you can see from this, the background is very black, which is exactly what we want. So to give me that graduated background in the original image, what I'm going to do is use a long, thin softbox just along the top here, so that I light the very top of this much more than I light the bottom. That will give me a gradual fall off across the card. So I've put this 4 foot by 1 foot softbox in position, and it's feathered away from the main subject and just pointing at the background here. With this being in this position, I would expect the fall off due to the inverse square law to be relatively fast across the distance on the back here. But we'll see how we go. Okay, so just at an arbitrary energy level, what I'll do, grab an image and we'll see what we get. There we go, and you can see immediately from that this is possibly a little bright. I do have the edge of the softbox in there, but I'm not really that bothered about that, as I will be cropping this down anyway. But the exposure seems to be a little over the top, so I'm going to take off, 2 stops to start with. Yes, I think the whole thing is getting very close now. We'll have a little look at the image a bit closer in. Just check the focus, which is okay. I think it could be a little bigger depth of field. And also, I think the whole image is slightly over. So what I'm going to do is just adjust the aperture. Now I started off with the aperture at f11, so I'm going to change that and just put that up to f16. But I'm not going to compensate for that. So that will take the whole thing down by about a stop. So we'll see what it looks like now. There we are. That's a lot more moody, I think. This is okay, but this has saturated the colour in the flower here quite nicely, and also the background has become very saturated now too. Okay, so for capturing the image, that's it. So just by using a few little techniques, getting rid of flare, placing the lights in the right place, I've been able to capture this classic still life look. So what I'm going to do now is just import that into Photoshop and do the bare minimum of post-processing. So here we are in Photoshop, and I've loaded up the file of the image that I captured earlier. So the first thing that I want to do is just make a copy of this so I can edit the copy and leave the original alone. So the way I prefer to do that is just to go onto the background layer here, right click the mouse, ask for a duplicate layer, ask for a new document. And we'll just call this Gerberia. So now I have another file at the top here, Gerberia, which is the one I'm going to edit. So I can just shut down the camera original. I've always got that to go back to. It just gives you that bit of redundancy. Okay, I'm going to use a particular crop for this since I'm using this for video. So I'm using 16:9, and I'm just going to maybe move that ever so slightly down in the frame, but I don't think I want to do very much more. I might bring the sides in ever so slightly, but I don't want to compress it too much. There we are, something like that should do. Yes, I'm reasonably happy with the composition that I've got there. So there we have it, a classic elegantly lit still life study. And I particularly like the composition within this image. There's quite a lot of what could be described as dead space to one side, but I think that adds to the dramatic effect of having the yellow of the flower against the blue of the background. And all in all, I think that's made a very nice picture. Okay, well I hope you liked watching how I made that, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.